Hey, John Gilroy here. We are recording this interview from the Agentforce World Tour, Washington, D.C. with world-famous Paul Tatum. Hit the music, Manny.
John, you're cracking me up. It's good to see you again. Thank you for coming back and visiting us. I remember our get-together a year ago, right here in the convention center. It's good to see you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you don't realize how important Paul is. I mean, he's got like a leash. He's got two handlers. They drag him from meeting to meeting to meeting, from podcast to video, to meet the customers, meet with partners. It's just, you must be exhausted at the end of this tour.
I am not exhausted. I'm enthralled and just so excited about what we're doing here. And, I'm wrapping up my day with you. What a better way to wrap up World Tour here in D.C.
Best way to do it completely. Let's talk about agents and agentic AI in the federal government. I'll just give you the mission impossible, the impact statement here. So how is this going to impact the federal mission? The whole idea of Salesforce and agentic AI.
Yeah, so a year ago when we talked, we had dozens of customers that were kind of in the pilot mode. The technology had just been released. They saw the promise of it. And here, fast forward a year, we have dozens of customers with what I call agents in the wild, right? They have been released. They're doing work both internally and externally. They're having huge impact. I have names for them. The beauty, the fun part of this is the customer kind of names that, Agent Kyle, Agent Bobby, Agent Tyler, and they're starting to gather statistics of impact. How much time is it saving? What's the productivity? What's the cost of returning contact or engagement with the public? And so what we're seeing is both the technology mature, the government's acceptance of the technology really be embraced, both in policy and in operations. And so those first use cases are now leading to use case number 2, 3, 4, and 5, because now they see the potential. So it's super exciting.
Last year I made a joke about Paul's Donut Shop, and Paul's Donut Shop doesn't have to worry about compliance, and maybe has to worry about security, but not just has to worry about selling donuts. However, when you use AI in government, you have to worry about security, compliance, and having mission aligned. So this is the next level up. And so how can Salesforce differentiate itself from other organizations in doing this really complex juggle of security and innovation?
Yeah, John, you and I have been in the D.C. area for a long time, and you can't say government and government systems and mission without thinking about security and compliance. And it's super important, right? The mission, the data, the accuracy, the transparency is all critical to the trust that a government wants to have with the public. And so we are highly aligned with that as we take our technology through the compliance processes, whether it be the FedRAMP High process for our agentic technologies, whether we're working with the Department of War with their impact level 4 or 5, which is their terminology for their compliances. And so we've kind of done the hard work up front, to back in our kind of engineering shops to ensure that all of the technology, security parameters, encryption, everything that is required to meet government requirements is built in from the beginning, introduced into the market called, the government marketplace, and really there to take advantage of. Because so many times technology gets introduced and it's like a bolt-on. It's like, hey, I saw this thing, and how, maybe it hasn't gone through the process, or the customer has to accredit it themselves. And at Salesforce, we deliver an enterprise platform. And one of the things that we've done for our entire 27-year existence is take complex, new innovative technology and make it simple for our customers to use and absorb. And part of that is the security model.
I get up early this morning and went to the keynote, and the presenter was Kendall Collins. He's like a professional speaker or something.
Yeah, Kendall's great.
He's a super duper. I can go all day long with the facts he spit out. 95% of AI pilots fail before making it into production. Wow, I think that's true. Just walk down the street and talk to a bank or maybe a factory, and they have these great ideas and the bright, shiny thing, and Paul's chasing after that bright, shiny thing. But the reality is you need an enterprise organization to bring it to fruition, don't you?
You do. And that's why, I kind of call the bright, shiny object is a good way to describe AI at times. And We love the innovative nature of our customers, or somebody who has discovered, it's a little bit like discovering fire for the first time. You're like, whoa, this AI thing's amazing. What can I do with it? And ultimately, to bring it into a very, I would say, productive ecosystem for organizations the size of government organizations and the importance of the government mission is to do it with an enterprise lens in mind, right? We're not creating a little app on the side to, handle my calculator or reserve a conference room. We're dealing with broad government systems that have been around for decades, but can also use the productivity boost of artificial intelligence and agentic capabilities. Go, wow, how do we help that civil servant with their backlog? How do we engage with 300 million customers in America that want this service or have these questions? And what's interesting, John, is in the past, those answers had to be always handled with, well, we need more capacity, or we just can't do it. How do you serve 350 million people other than a website and telling them to click around through the HTMLs? Well, today with agentic technologies, you can personalize it. You can be more proactive. You can have a conversation in ways and in languages and in kind of channels that were never really possible before at scale. So I think the difference is that the technology is allowing the government to reach and do things in their engagement that they never thought possible.
I went to YouTube this morning, did my homework, and I typed in Salesforce, and I got a good quote. Now I have a quote here from YouTube, and you have to tell me who said this quote, okay?
Okay, well, I'll give it a try.
You got to tell me who said this quote from YouTube this morning. Right. Here's the quote. I think government will be the largest users of agentic technologies of any industry. Now, who said that?
I have said that. I don't know. I don't know if that is where
that's a bold statement, sir.
Well, I think it is not that bold. Huh. I think, well, listen, look at what government does. They probably are the largest, store of data. If you were going into the IT basements of Washington, D.C., there are decades and decades of, tax records and medical claims and loans and grant, so there are just a mountain of data from government. So that you got that. Then you have a fairly large constituent called 350 million people in the American public. And then you have international kind of customers, let's call it. And then you have 15 cabinet level agencies that cover so government is a industry of industries. You got healthcare, you got logistics, you got transportation, you know them all, John. And so the intersection of that, the need and the opportunity for agentic AI to make a difference is beyond what I think any single entity, take Walmart. Okay, help me return my tennis shoes. That's interesting. Take the Treasury, the IRS, CMS, USDA, Department of Energy, Veterans, State Department, diplomacy, the opportunities and the ability for government to really accelerate and do something is right there. So that's why I made that statement a year ago. And I still hold to it.
It's a good statement. Yeah. We'll find out. Hold your feet to the fire in 1 year.
All right. Well, I'll be back.
I hope Kendall Collins is back. He did a great job. Let's go back to what Kendall said this morning. So I'm taking notes, and he says context, and well, must be something about context. I thought about a podcast I listened to last week. It was someone from NIST and someone from like a Pacific lab, and they said, well, people just grab data, but they don't realize that, data, you have to look at it in terms of, you may have a chunk of data that you can use legally, but you can't use ethically. You may have another chunk of data that is accurate, and not compliant. And so many times what Salesforce can provide is allow an end user, a federal leader, to use data that they know would fit within the context of what they're trying to accomplish. And so I think this is what's so important. I mean, you read these stories about Joe Blow went to ChatGPT and built a CRM, and no, come on now, that's a pie crust promise. It breaks like a pie crust. It's nothing. But I think what Salesforce does, it gives leaders the tools to build something safely.
It absolutely does. Speaking of context, so think about the number 100,000. And you are a LLM. What does that mean to you? Could mean anything.
Yeah.
Could mean anything, right? You have no context,
Yeah.
right? All right. What if I say, if the result is greater than 100,000, give John $1,000.
I like that.
Right. You have a little more context, but you actually don't know what the variables really mean. Now, if you say, if John's application is correct, he is entitled to a particular benefit, here's his $1,000 payment to that benefit. That's context. So what's so important in this AI context-driven discussion around data is the enterprise platforms like Salesforce is giving context to that number 100,000. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? You don't know until you have context of the data, the situation, the mission, and the actual application. I'll tell you a little story. I was with one of the large LLM providers last week, and they're one of our partners, and we partner with a lot of large LLM providers. And they said, Paul, we really need Salesforce. I'm like, tell me more about that. Well, we only really do two things. We have this little thing called a chat thing, and we have an API, an endpoint into our large language model. We're kind of like a brain, but we don't have a body. We have no arms, we have no legs, we can't walk, we can't talk, we can't see, we don't have context, we can't take action, we can't do anything without a body. I'm like, well, we kind of like your brain. So let's obviously partner. And we partner with a lot of brains out there, a lot of large language models. But ultimately, what is so powerful is the ability to combine those two forces for government benefit. So, when you think about Salesforce taking action, handling grants and loans and customer interactions and responses, and combining that with our agentic AI that's going out to these large language models to, get answers, get results, but then put it into action inside the organization. That's where the real magic happens.
There may be people listening to this podcast scratching their head and go, why Salesforce? Well, let me give you a real good reason. I listen to podcasts all the time. I was listening to a podcast called the All In Podcast. There's a guy named David Sachs. He's a White House AI, and they talked about Salesforce. It was like a month ago. And here's what he said, and this is really true. He says, look, Salesforce has had to defend itself against repeated attacks for 20 years. It's proven very durable. I mean, if you go to the Pentagon and you say it's resilient and durable, they'll say, come on in. I mean, that's really what Salesforce is all about. I mean, for 20 years, it's been durable and proven, and when it approaches AI, it's going to bring some of those habits with them, isn't it? I mean, that's what you're offering.
Absolutely. I love David Sachs' point of view. And what's really interesting, John, and this is really emerging, let's take Claude Coworks. It's obviously in the news. There's a lot going on. And we're using these tools at Salesforce. We're using, I call them AI builders. Think of them in the old days of integrated development environments like Eclipse. If you remember Eclipse, everybody has their favorite development environment. That's not where the real strategic value is. Everybody has one. It's kind of, their personal choice. But what's the beauty of the Salesforce platform, after 27 years, it's well documented, it's well understood. Every data model is known. Hundreds of thousands of customers use it. And so what we're doing and what our customers are doing is taking these AI builders and pointing them at the Salesforce platform and saying, hey, I would like to build this on Salesforce. And, out comes this application. But what they get, and the reason these are so powerful is, one, the platform's super predictable, well documented, well performing, and then the customer gets the application they want. They get the security, the scalability, all the things that Salesforce has delivered for 27 years. And once again, the perfect combination of AI tooling and an enterprise platform that is delivering differentiated value. I'm not worried about the person over in the corner building a Claude Cowork CRM, because ultimately what I want them to do and what they will do and what they are doing is saying, hey, Claude, can you point at Salesforce and build me let's say, a transportation or a travel application to handle travel for DoD?
So it's compliant?
That's compliant, that's IL4, that has all the, and they'll go in and configure the platform accordingly. Super, super interesting time.
I love to steal quotes, and I heard a quote this morning, not from Kendall, but from another guest he had down there, and talks about, there's got to be a human in the loop with AI, and he said, no, it's not humans in the loop, it's humans in the lead. That's a t-shirt there, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's really a good one, because that's how I think we should think about agentic AI. It's agents and humans working together to solve complex problems at scale. But the humans are in the lead. I mean,
Absolutely.
You just talked about it. The human decides when to interact with Salesforce or not. So the human, you can't leave this out, can you?
You really can't, and we do not advocate for that whatsoever. Like we are
humans, yes.
Yeah, vote for humans. I think at the end of the day, what we are big advocates of, and we continue to see in our own development and in our deployments, is humans working alongside and being augmented with the agentic capabilities of the platform of Agentforce, right? There's incredible capacity and capabilities in Agentforce, and we're seeing new use cases every day. But ultimately, it is to augment and really kind of take the burden off of the human, because I think we all know there's a lot more work to be done, higher value things for that civil servant to do, for the human to do, and say, listen, if you can schedule. A perfect example I had the other day with a customer. It's like, coordinating schedules between a customer and government is just a pain, right? It's emails. It's like, hey, why don't you come in and do it this particular time? If you can automate that, put that into a agentic layer and say, listen, I need to meet with John. Go figure it out. Yeah. And then, you interact with an agent, right? It's a simple use case, but those were things that were done with emails, with humans, and you can all of a sudden free that person up to go work on other things while the agent is scheduling John for his appointment.
I want to talk about the Washington Convention Center and the Agentforce World Tour, Washington, D.C. here. There were 110 sessions today, Paul. I mean, how many did you go to? 110 in 8 hours? How many different rooms did you guys use? So it seems like any conceivable problem for an agency, transportation or all these different segments, and you talked about the federal government, it seems like it addresses so many different segments of the problems that our government leaders have.
It really does, and that speaks to the beauty and the diversity of the technology, right? So I specifically work very closely with government, nonprofits, and education organizations around the world. And even inside of those three, what we call industries, there are many, many sub-industries. I'll give you a perfect example. One I'm working with is student information systems for K through 12. Now, it turns out that I didn't know a lot about this part of the industry, but this is the attendance records and the syllabus and the grades. It's a very, very fractured software space. Lots of little boutiques, and they're good. But what these schools are coming back to Salesforce on and say, you know what? Our little boutique piece of software that's running on a server under the principal's desk just got hacked, and we have ransomware, right? All across the country, right? So they're coming to Salesforce and saying, we need an enterprise application for student information systems. So we're building that, and they're helping us build it. And so you're thinking, well, how do you go from a K through 12 use case to helping the Pentagon with their mission, all on the same technology? So that's the breadth. And then the depth, which is even kind of more remarkable, is the small business, 1 or 2 people, 3 people using Salesforce for logistics, customer relationship, all the way up to helping the IRS, engage with hundreds of millions of taxpayers. So it's very rare, I've never seen it in my career, where a single platform both has the kind of the breadth of industry scale and then the depth from small to large. Because what typically happens, and I've seen this personally in companies I've worked for, is enterprise companies that kind of go to the top of the stack, right? Well, we can serve the top 50. And then, some small company comes in and, kind of starts to look at the small, medium-sized business. And you can never figure out how to get down there and serve them. Salesforce technology has been able to do both.
Taking notes, I wrote the word fractured, and immediately I thought about an aspect of the federal government that is direct application for Salesforce. I don't know if you realize it, but there are 100 different HR systems in the different agencies throughout the government here. 100 different ones. Each one handles retirement, medical care, coverage, validations, authentication separately.
Yes.
There's just no companies that would run that way. I mean, you can't tell me there aren't duplicative processes. I mean, Paul, what's his social security number? When's his hire? I mean, these are repeated and duplicated. It would seem this would be a perfect target for an enterprise-level application like Salesforce.
We would love to help with that problem.
Yes, it's perfect.
We have talked to the organizations about that opportunity. Right before I came in to see you, I was in the CIO experience. And one of our CIOs from government raised his hand and said, "Hey, Paul, I have a bunch of .NET applications, and it's really hard for me to change them out. How do we handle that using Salesforce?" Same thing here, 100 different HR systems. If you were to talk to any of those CIOs, they would say, "Paul, I can't just rip that out. I can't wait for government to build the monolithic HR for everybody." And what we're a big advocate of architecturally is to start with a system of engagement. All of those systems are going to be there for a while, but you can start to have what we call a single digital front door on Salesforce. Hey, rather than 100 different experiences, let's get one. Let's call it hr.gov, whatever the site is. And then let's use technologies like Data 360 from Salesforce to do zero-copy aggregation of the data across those to get a single profile for Paul Tatum. Maybe I've worked at 3 different agencies. Maybe I have retirement plans across them, right? But ultimately, organizations are trying to unify data in a simple way. In the old days, the message was, well, you got to do a big MDM project, you got to collapse it all into, you got to rationalize it, you got to clean it all. And 10 years later, you're still not done.
Yeah.
And with Data 360, and we brought this out of our experience with our commercial marketing customers, you can do zero-copy aggregation and unification of that data to really simplify these kind of problems.
There's an old television show back from the 1950s with Johnny Carson. It was called Who Do You Trust? And it has great application for today in the federal government.
All right.
Because I am sure that federal leaders look at the data, they say, what do you trust? I mean, it's a new television. Hey, it's trust is important here. And so you can't have effective AI unless you have data that is trustworthy. Trusted.
Correct.
So you get a situation where you have an agency, multi-cloud, coming and going, maybe some repatriation going back on-prem, and you got air gap systems, and you got a mess. Now, you can tell me, you going to trust that data? Really? Are you? So what's the answer for trusting data in this confusing world we live in?
Well, I do think that the agencies and organizations, they have a pretty good handle on the trusted data sources within their organizations. And with our data fabrics, we're able to connect into that, feed it into the platform, power the agentic layers like Agentforce inside of that. I'll give you an example. So last week I got a call from a CIO of a federal agency, and they're using Salesforce, Agentforce to do some work. And they said, Paul, I know you guys have some default approved, federally approved LLMs that we can power your agents with, but we have one inside the agency. It's trained, it's certified. Like, we don't want the general purpose one.
Right, they trust it.
We have one that is inside, that's trusted, that's been certified. And we have the model of bring your own model. We have, that's one of the operating principles of Agentforce is, yep, there's some out there that are more general purpose, might work for you, but I think in most cases, government organizations are training their own models on very, very specific content and context-specific problems, right? So it's like, hey, listen, I'm not going to ask this large language model to figure out how to plan my vacation. It's never trained to do that. All it's trained to do is handle maybe tariffs and the pricing of tariffs, or handle the tax code, or handle. And when you get that specific, the accuracy goes up, the context is very relevant, and you can start to really see the difference. So I think organizations, governments are not looking to connect everything that they've ever seen and touched. They're looking to really connect in data that's contextually relevant to their agentic ambitions and plans.
I mentioned 110 sessions. I imagine there's 1 or 2 sessions that deal with national security, because this is Washington, D.C.
Yes.
It's going to be a popular topic.
Yeah.
I see people in uniforms walking around here. They're probably at these security sessions. So how does Salesforce support mission readiness in these sensitive environments while at the same time meeting security and compliance standards? It's kind of a push and pull here.
Well, we're very privileged to be partnered with our Department of War colleagues and supporting their mission on a number of levels, and we've done that for many, many years. But at the same time, they have really come to us and said, we love what we're seeing from Salesforce. We love what we see in your private sector, use cases. We could use some of that. And I think, recent policy and directives have said, hey, the more commercially available software and capabilities we can bring in, not recreate, the better. So that's when we really stood up Mission Force. And Kendall Collins is the president of Mission Force. He was here at World Tour. And one of Kendall's primary things that he's been doing is accelerating every commercially available capability of Salesforce and bringing it into government, and really specifically into those defense use cases in order to support back-end operations, logistics, recruiting, healthcare. There's so many things that Salesforce can help with. And so part of that investment is what we call product parity. Make sure that what's commercially available is available in government. The second part is that product parity is jumping into and meeting the requirements of the Defense Department or Department of War around Impact Level 4, Impact Level 5, Top Secret. And many in the industry have met those, but we're one of the first in the SaaS space to bring these capabilities to those organizations. So we're happy, we're really thrilled to partner. They've been, it really takes a private-public partnership with government to go through those pretty rigorous and strenuous reviews, and we're seeing great results from it.
I know Kendall Collins is good. There's a lot of good people who work for the federal government, but I want to know what you have to say about the future of Salesforce and the federal government and this whole concept of a fully agentic federal agency. We look back 27 years. I'm not going to ask you to look forward 27. Who knows what's going to happen then? Just maybe 3 to 5 years out. And tell me what kind of successes, what kind of challenges, and what will Salesforce look like 3 or 4 years down the road?
Well,
a tough one.
I think it's a little bit like when the internet showed up. I'm embarrassed to say I remember that day.
Me too.
And I didn't really know what I was looking at the time. I had this intern from Virginia Tech that worked for me. He's like, Paul, come over here. I want you to show you this thing on this Mosaic browser. And I told him, hey, stop goofing around, get back to work. And little did I know that this 20-year-old intern was way ahead of my time, and I think AI is a little bit similar. We're 2-3 years into this agentic journey as an industry and as a company, and government's probably about 1 to 2 years into it. And so where we're going to go, I think there's kind of 3 phases. Right now, we're in a reactive agentic. The agents are responding to our prompting as users. If you hit a website with an agent and say, I have a question, I need help, I want you to look something up. If you're internal, hey, would you write me an email? Would you scan this case and give me feedback? That's a reactive interaction. So that's where we are today. I think, but with the scale that we have and the accuracy that we're seeing, you're going to go to a proactive. John, I have certain signals on things going on with you. Can I take an action on your behalf? Government's never really been able to be proactive at scale. It's too expensive. It's too hard. The personalization and technology wasn't there. So you're going to go from reactive agentics to proactive agentics. And then I think the third phase will be personal agentics, where you're going to kind of have an agent in your pocket. Who knows? Maybe I'll have Paul, the agent, in my pocket, and it understands everything about my relationship with the IRS, which I hope always stays good, and with CMS and with SSA, and it's picking up signals on when I was born, where I'm living, when did I go through a security checkpoint at TSA with my passport. Maybe I should be on the Safe Traveler watch list because I'm going to a dangerous area with the State Department. So that would be kind of an agent in my pocket. Is it possible? Is it feasible? Is it desired for maybe 350 million people to have, as you get your Social Security number, you get an agent assigned to you that starts to be your concierge into government.
If you're listening to this podcast and you're walking your dog, or you're in the squat rack, or you're just wondering, what I'll do is I'll keep links in the show notes page for a lot of topics we discussed, so you can find out more about Agentic Force and how it can help the federal government achieve their really challenging goals. Well, this has been a great interview. We're running out of time, Paul. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Paul Tatum, Executive Vice President, Global Public Sector at Salesforce.